Yesterday, we heard a lot about the risks to supply chain resilience. So let's open today by looking at how technology is advancing supply chain security. To open day 2, we are delighted to welcome a good friend of TAPA EMEA and someone who's made an important contribution to the development of TAPA as a former chair of TAPA Americas and a co-author of the original TAPA FSR security standard. Today, he's usually based in Scottsdale, Arizona, as Group Innovation Director at BSI. But we are delighted that he's taken the time to join us here in Amsterdam. Thank you, Dan. Please welcome everybody, Dan Pertell, to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning. One more time. Good morning. All right, good. You got to help me wake up. There's 9 hours of jet lag, so I had to bring coffee up here. So I wanted to start just by, 25 years ago when we formed TAPA in Arizona, there were 7 of us in a room, and never in our wildest days and dreams did I ever expect to see, what I'm seeing this week. 850 people here and online, 3 different FSRs, and the kind of success. So my congrats to Thorsten, Marcel, George, Paul, some of the old team, and the TAPA men and women out there. So this is really impressive, and what success looks like. You're bringing value as an association to your membership, and you have great events. So again, Dan Pertell with BSI, and BSI is a global audit company. I was with Intel for about 15 years, where I led their global supply chain security initiative. I got the itch to go it on my own, like many of us here, and started a company, a supply chain predictive modeling company back in the late 90s, and sold that over to BSI and have been here since. We have about 5,000 employees. We do audits, certification, supply chain risk management software, many of which you are familiar with, and some good people around 65 countries in the world. But in 2018, I got the tap from the CEO to start an innovation division for our company. Digital transformation, and just the fast pace of how the world and commerce is changing in general is a threat to a lot of companies, and we're no different. And so I've got the charter to try to advance our company, to digitally advance our footprint and the way that we do things. And I have to say, with COVID, it's been a playground to be able to do that. We've been able to leapfrog what we thought maybe we might be able to hit by 2025, 2026, and 2021. So it's presented some real challenges for us, some horrible times and tragic losses, but from an innovator's perspective, it's been pretty rich. And I'll share some of that with you. I think what I learned yesterday, if there's one thing that there's no shortage of in the supply chain, it's opportunity, it's risk, it's threats. I mean, what I loved about working supply chain security for about 25 years is no 2 companies are alike, no 2 supply chains are alike. Threats and challenges are different, and it just makes it fun. And there's no shortage of fun right now. Listening to Michael yesterday and some of the challenges they have from a keynote perspective, and apparently we've got some pretty big challenges in the U.S. if you listen in on them, and part of the cause of some of those shortages that are having a ripple effect with everybody. But just to talk about a few things in addition to what was talked about yesterday. So, if you're a new family in the U.S., it's really hard to find baby formula. And if you've got a child that's lactose intolerant, almost impossible to find lactose intolerant baby formula out there. Sunflower oil. We have clients that have food products that they just can't manufacture because they're major importers of sunflower oil from Ukraine. And with palm, we saw that yesterday too, the palm oil of Indonesia being banned from an exporting perspective. It's providing some real challenges to alternatives out there. Wheat. From a BSI perspective, we are the world's largest medical device certification company, so anything that goes in your body or on your body, including an N95 mask, has to be certified by a regulatory body on behalf of the government. We do a lot of that, and N95 masks are one of those things that we certify. And so in a certified package of N95 mask will be one of our certificates in the mask as well. And they use the certificate to then authenticate the product that's within. And we saw millions and millions and millions of masks that were counterfeited, shipped, and they got very creative with counterfeiting our certificates. And we've got some solutions around that now. Counterfeit vaccines, we're working around that. And the profiteers coming in and adding an element of trust and distrust within the supply chain, as well as different certificates. Something that really, pisses me off in the US that we're seeing from a supply chain perspective is I want the new Toyota truck, I want a new Tundra, I sold my old one, and we have something there called market adjustment. I don't know if you have it here, but it's $25,000 on top of the manufacturer's suggested retail price to actually to buy that product. And it's all going to the dealer. It's just lining the pockets of the dealer, and they're taking advantage of this constrained demand that we got yesterday. And that's something I saw in Michael's presentation yesterday. I don't know if you picked up on that, but part of the product, I think it was the new PlayStation release, he had constrained demand. And I didn't think I'd see that in my career again. At Intel, in the late 90s, we saw constrained demand where we could not make enough product for the market demand. And so when you had a loss, a $10 million loss, it was a $10 million loss in revenue that you would never recuperate because you didn't have another $10 million of product sitting on the shelf. And back then with TAPA, we did the study called The Indirect Impact of Cargo Theft. We did it through the RAND Corporation. And when you dip into constrained product demands, there's a multiplier of what that loss looks like. It's no longer 10 million, it's actually 2 to 5 times that. And we're towards the upper end at Intel, 2 to 5 times. So the value of that loss was actually like 50 million. And we're seeing constrained across a lot of the product sets for the companies that you represent, the product lines that you have. And so the value of a cargo theft hurts a lot more in these markets where you don't have things or shelf and inventory to actually replenish that. We talked about scope 3 yesterday, sustainability, the ESGs, and those are going to probably impact everybody in this room at some point. You know, it's not just theft. I think that you'll see us, you know, from a risk management perspective and a security perspective have to worry about. But could we be sourcing from a factory where there's social this or social that, child labor, forced labor, and prison labor? In the US, we're seeing something called WROs, work release orders, where we are seeing just huge lots of containers seized because of conflict cotton, the weaker situation in China, or other wrongs associated with factories that companies are sourcing from. That's not going away. Chartered vessels. I know working with Apple, working with Intel at times when you've got a big product release, and we saw it yesterday with Sony, that you would charter a Cargo Lux freighter, something like that, to get your goods because you got that big launch. Never before have I seen companies chartering whole sea vessels because there's such a backlog with it. So I've been seeing that lately, and that's kind of a unique dynamic, but it's extending to other modalities, which we've never seen. So a lot of challenges. I think it's fun to try to address those and be in those times. So job security with these challenges that we have, but we're sure in an interesting time. I want to talk now about a few things that we're working on that really go to address a couple key areas that we're focused on from a BSI perspective, which is trust, digital trust, as well as sustainability and some of the efforts around there. Again, trying to advance a very, I would say, an old, tired industry. Audits haven't changed much in 50 years, and we hear that quite a bit when we talk to some of our key clients is the way that you work with us is the same way that you worked with us in the 1970s when ISO 9000 and the Deming and the quality standards came to be, and you started providing certification on it. So we are taking that medicine and doing things with it. So there's 4 areas that I want to talk about briefly. And the first one is immersive. So, and I'll define that, but it's different than hybrid, right? We're in a hybrid meeting right now. We've got 550 of us here, 300 and change online, so it's a hybrid event. I don't mean either attend in person or attend online. There's more to it, but I want to talk a little bit about that. Ecosystems, and there's a lot of technology behind that, and I'm not trying to make this a technology presentation at all. but the ecosystems and the value of the data that we have, and how data is starting to come in spades and what we can do with that data, and then how we could build trust with ecosystems, something else that I'll quickly address. Traceability is another big one. I think traceability is it's been an issue for the 25, 30 years I've been doing this, and there are no silver bullets out there. Different modalities, there's just different dynamics with traceability, and to find something that fits just one is really hard. There could be a freight forwarder or a group of freight forwarders that have their own solution, but they typically don't merge in any central point. So we're working some traceability challenges right now, which are pretty cool, interesting results. I'll talk about that. And then lastly, I'll just wrap up with some authenticity. None of this is for sale. This is all just educational. And if you're curious about it, I will be at the party tonight. Looking forward to that. All right, so the top challenges that we're solving is really, what I opened up with is traditional audit methodology. You come in, you audit, you send a man or woman on a plane or train. A couple weeks later, we get the audit report. You tell us what we did wrong, not necessarily what we did right, and that's got to change. And I hear that pretty consistently. And it's a snapshot in time. It's one day, maybe in a cycle of 2 years or 3 years that we're actually on site looking at something. And with the digital transformation that's going on, there's probably a lot more that we could be doing, and I'll talk about that, how we're working with IoT sensors, using AI to continuously audit. And there's a lot of opportunities out there for us to really advance the game and update this tired industry. Future compliance gaps. What I hear quite commonly is, you always tell me about what was broken 2 months ago when you were on X site, but you're not telling me what's going to break where and how do I best remediate it. And we've got the data to do that. We've got so much data that we could tell the client, what's going to be wrong, where it's going to be wrong, what country, and what the severity level is, and how you might have a systematic problem with that as well. And so we're using machine learning, we're using NLP, and different AI to go ahead and predict what issues that we have. And it should be no surprise, to you especially, the law of large numbers will eventually bite you, right? We know that eventually we're going to have a hijack in Mexico, in Brazil, in South Africa, so you shouldn't be surprised. And so we can use these numbers, we can use this to go ahead and predict other events within the supply chain. Counterfeiting and product authenticity, huge problem for clients that we're trying to come up with some solutions with, but it all really boils down to trust, consumer trust. Consumers are demanding more visibility, more of a story associated with that product that they're purchasing, and they don't want it coming from the company necessarily. They don't want them telling that it's good, it's sustainable, that we've bought offsets in terms of carbon and you can trust us. They want a neutral third party to do that, and so that's what we're working on with carbon markets, and a lot of different things that we're working on from a consumer trust perspective, which is really transitioning us from a B2B type of business. We have 82,000 clients, but really what we're hearing from our clients is you need to be able to tell the story to our tens to billions of consumers out there that are buying our product, because there's this deficit of trust with governments, around the vaccine, around a lot of things now. And so we need to get involved in that, and we need to start addressing this trust issue. And lastly, product origin and traceability. Can you tell the story of that product, how it was made, the chain of custody, what it looked like, where it went, what was the carbon associated with that product, and start to do some work around there. So these are some of the top challenges. Theft's in there. Theft's something that we continue to work quite aggressively. But I think good supply chain risk management is not going to be a one-trick pony. You're going to look at a lot of different things, and these are some of the things that I see that are on the horizon. So what we want to do is just disrupt this next generation of compliance. For 50 years, the clock speed associated with call it innovating the world of audit hasn't changed much. We may have switched from a clipboard to a laptop or a tablet, but the way we do it is largely the same. And in came COVID. Now in 2018, we started testing technology to do what we called back then remote audits. We wanted to be able to do an audit with the same effect as being on the ground, but not send a person to the site to do it. And so our second generation of audit is called something immersive, to where actually you can immerse and you can actually be present on scene to actually do that. And we imagine that that's going to last 3 to 5 years before the next round comes in. So, not like Moore's Law, where every 18 months the microprocessor doubles in speed and halves in size. We're looking at a 3 to 5 year clock pace associated with some of these big changes. Audit 4.0, which we're already starting to work on for the factory of the future and Factory 4.0, you may have heard of that. More and more people are outside the factory, more and more automation is inside the factory. So as an audit group, are we going to be talking to machines because we don't have people in there previously that we could question from a process perspective? And so audit companies are now forcing really to this change to go ahead and be able to interface with those machines, those smart machines, and do some robust analytics around it. So we're connected through IoT devices. We're connected through smart CCTV, where one use case from a few years ago is I can tell if they're doing 7-point container inspections properly in China through image AI and computer vision of a factory in China, just by monitoring that smart CCTV and being connected. I can look at a food pack house and a food packing line, seeing if people have got the right PPE on, they got the right protocols in place. Connected to the IoT devices, I can see if that meat freezer ever dips below the required level of temperature that it has to maintain. So what's going to happen is you see that you'll have a point-in-time audit, which could be every 1, 2, 3 years, to where continuous assurance is coming, to where you can look in real time and start to monitor to see if things are, in fact, breaking down without your awareness. So we created 4 different immersive levels associated with our auditing. And level 1 is kind of like what we're doing right now. We got live streaming, Teams, Zoom. If you never need to get up and leave a conference room, level 1's fine. You can do an audit. But that wouldn't work, I think, for TAPA. I know that doesn't work for CTPAT. That doesn't work for some of our other clients. You actually have to get in the factory, see the perimeter, and do some things, which is where level 2 or level 3 comes in. Level 2 would be connected to a smartphone, to where you've got a lot of different functionality than you would just a Teams meeting or Zoom meeting. Telestration, pointer, video capture. You can record voice. You can actually have AI that's looking out for what we see in China quite a bit. Bribes being made, gratuities, red envelopes for auditors to not have any nonconformities. Believe it or not, we have a couple a month associated with that, and so we can listen and see if something isn't right. Level 3 was really our first use case that we started working with, which is smart glasses. And actually it was February 20 in Wuhan. We weren't allowed in a factory. We had no idea what was going on back then. And we said, well, we'll send them some of our smart glasses and we'll do the audit through a smart glass. And little did we know that was the epicenter for what now is COVID. And that was really the start of when we started doing these immersive audits. Level 4 is a digital twin. So in addition to getting that audit report, you have a drone, orthomosaic, you've got interior building, LiDAR in 3D, and a digital twin of that operation where then you can go in and you can conduct your own assessments. It's like living in Google Streets inside a distribution center, inside a factory where you can see things. You can be connected to IoT and see what those devices look like. And that's probably the far future, but it's coming quickly. So there's 4 different immersive levels that we're working, and it's taken off. In 2019, I think we did 500 immersive audits. Since then, we've been doing 150,000 a year. We just passed 300,000 immersive audits in 176 countries. And what's I found a little bit odd and amazing, maybe the clients were just happy that they were getting certified, because without a certification, many cannot export, cannot import, can't sell their products. But our net promoter score, client satisfaction score, actually went up, which I think is amazing. So it's here to stay. I think you'll be seeing a lot more of it. I think when COVID does go away, let's hope soon, that this is going to be a technology that will continue, especially in light of the SDGs and what we're trying to do from a sustainability perspective. So shifting quickly then to ecosystems, there's another association that I know SCAN's well aware of, and I sit on the board of. It's called SCAN, Supplier Compliance Audit Network. It's not a competitor to TAPA. It's I would call it a brother or sister, and they work in audit trade compliance, mainly CTPAT. And very much like TAPA, the thought is there, if Walmart is in doing that factory audit on Tuesday, the next week it's Target, then Home Depot, then Ashley Furniture, and then Lowe's, actually the top 5 importers into the United States. And they have common criteria, they have common remediation, so can you bundle that? Can you have a single audit done, completed, and then share that with those members that actually use it? So that's the concept. Again, the FSR for this group is the minimum security criteria of CTPAT/AEO, so trade compliance. So they have 60 members now. It's still pretty small, but it's 1.7 trillion in sales, so it's really big companies. Again, the top 5 importers into the US are members, and just about every brand you'd recognize well. They just surpassed last month 20,000 certifications, and they just went operational 2016. And how the government now is using SCAN and BSI is we're doing surrogate audits. It's called surrogate audits on behalf of the government. So we actually go out, we have level 3 smart glass technology, and we're on a site that's going to be audited by the government, and we're connected to the government, and they basically give us our marching orders. So we're the on the ground, eyes and ears for them, and they can conduct an audit or validation, a CTPAT validation, and the client could be on there too. So it could be Walmart, could be whomever. And we've done a few of those last summer. It's something that we're growing, and it got named a best practice. And it's pretty simple as it illustrates. So we've got a BSI person out in the field that is connected to Homeland Security as well as the SCAN board of directors or the member that's actually getting validated. And yeah, we can get an audit done in about 6 hours and no airfare required. We are also writing a private standard, and I talked to a few people on standards yesterday. We are a standards company. We write about 2,000 standards a year, but typically we convene an ecosystem, get subject matter experts together like yourself to build that. In this case, we're actually writing one jointly with SCAN on immersive auditing. While we learned it's easy to get audit companies up to spec from a technology perspective, what to use, what not to use, how to use it, and how to conduct one is not intuitive. I've witnessed several audits that have not been great, and so we're writing that standard. Now, the way that we use blockchain technology in ecosystems, very similar to TAPA. There's a number of different audit providers. In SCAN's case, there's 7, of which BSI is 1. We also do the second-party program management of the whole association. It's all loaded into SCM and risk-based. But when the audits come in from the different service providers, we take the 10+2 data elements, which is what you use to advance manifest file a C container going into the United States, so it can go to the National Targeting Center. They do their math on it, and they determine which containers they're going to inspect based on whatever risk dynamics. But if it's coming from a SCAN certified factory, then there's a level of trust than if it was just coming from anyone. So it's part of this force multiplier concept. We provide 10 different data elements via the blockchain that mirror that of 10+2 data elements. Years in business, company name, factory ID, the compliance score, the risk level associated with it, number of employees, do they have an AEO certification from a mutually recognized government. We turn that into a blockchain hash, which is a 42-character alphanumeric, something that nobody's going to recognize. That's the technical aspect of it. But we convert that into a QR code to where anybody can scan it. And on a permission perspective, you can then look into this ecosystem and you can see that this is a SCAN certified factory. Why did we do that? Because we had a lot of false claims out there. We had people falsely claiming that they had certificates issued by SCAN and that they were in good standing to get big purchase orders, probably from members in this room, as well as scan. And so they were falsely claiming to have credentials that they didn't have. So we built a system. It's got easy user interface, and you can quickly research to see what it is, recheck the blockchain to make sure it's valid, not expired, and work on that and actually understand where we're at from a certification perspective. There's 6 different products that we've blockchained at this point. I think blockchain's here to stay. I wish I'd invested $20,000 of my own dollars in blockchain when I first started working with this blockchain company that we're working with, because today's dollars, that'd be worth $15 million. And I wouldn't be on stage. I'd be on a boat somewhere out here in Amsterdam. And lesson learned. But blockchain, I think, there's a lot of question, but it is gained a ton of popularity and being seen as a real solid technology in the future. So I want to wrap up quickly, just showing a couple quick use cases in terms of how we're trying to increase trust as it relates to consumers. And when you think consumer, it could be a patient, could be a doctor, could be another company, or it could be somebody, buying that PlayStation 5. So in the first case, again, using blockchain technology, what we've done is we've started to blockchain vaccinations, or in this case, donated medicines to an NGO for life-saving medicines that are distributed to countries where these patients would otherwise not have the ability to live without this medicine. So it's very worthwhile. Some very great pharmaceutical companies donate their very expensive drugs to these markets. But unfortunately, if you look at WHO and you understand some of the risk associated with it, about 30% of those donated medicines are stolen, diverted for profit. And so we wanted to put in a system that actually had that supply chain visibility, traceability, as well as that reconciliation of it. And we put that into a number of distribution centers, or medical distribution centers, and then medical treatment facilities across Southeast Asia, 26 to be precise. And we noticed some discrepancies from 3 facilities, really bad discrepancies that were in play. And they said they couldn't scan the technology. They were standing 7 feet away trying to scan something. And some things just didn't add up. And so we knew we had a problem, so we addressed it with training. And then it was a whistleblower that came out later that said, look, most of this stuff is being stolen by top management, which is exactly what you want a system to point out, that there was some trust issues, serious trust issues associated with that. And now we're busy rolling out this blockchain traceability program for the company across the globe. It's integrated into Screen Connect, formerly SCM, so we've got dashboards in there. And we could show all the way down to a lot, batch, or an individual serial number level exactly the chain of custody associated with that product, what inpatient it went into, redacted, and give them a lot of intelligence on it. And so again, a way that we're trying to digitally bring trust to consumers. The last one, and I'll quickly go over this, is what we're doing from a product authenticity perspective. And I've said this for a number of years, that counterfeits are the cancer of supply chain. It's hidden. You don't know how bad it is. You know when somebody's got a Louis Vuitton bag that's getting on an EasyJet flight that probably doesn't have the economical means to buy that bag. All right, we've all seen it. But what does that do in terms of eroding the value of that brand? And a lot of manufacturers, OEMs, deal with this. So we've got 3 technologies that we're testing out right now to see where market adoption looks like and if it actually does bring trust. The first one is nanotracer technology. It's simply, a rare earth mineral that's mixed into the composite coating of the finished good packaging, and we could take that and we can verify if in fact if that's a valid package or not. Has not been defeated. But there's no analytics with it. It doesn't roll up into anything. You can't really dashboard it. So it's very one-to-one, but good. BSI Authenticator, where you can use your cell phone, a consumer could use their cell phone to look at those same rare earth minerals by taking a picture and scanning that to see if in fact it does carry those components necessary to authenticate that product. And then the third would be QR code and 4-digit code, which could be under the cap of something, where you scan that and it is truly one-to-one. It's not a lot, it's not a batch number. This bottle of honey matches this QR code and this 4-digit. And with that, when that's scanned, and you can scan that if you want to do it quickly, you can go ahead and get a full story associated with that product. So the consumer's going there, so you're educating the consumer while you're concurrently authenticating, which is pretty cool, but I think this provides more value. Yes, you can determine and educate the consumer if they've got a counterfeit issue, a counterfeit product. If it is counterfeit, let's say that a counterfeiter copied that QR code and that 4-digit code. Well, it's going to be getting scanned 4, 5, 6 times, right? And then there'll be a message that comes up that we can not guarantee the authenticity associated with that product, and nobody's going to buy that 50-pound bottle of honey. But what happens here is every time there is a scan, then it goes in and it populates the dashboard where we can see the authentic scans. We can see if we've got repeat scans of the same QR code and number. But probably more importantly, and what I wasn't expecting just talking to clients, is the value's not, yes, it's great to know that it's an authentic pair of Blundstone boots. You know, one of the clients I talked to down in Tasmania. It's more value to us knowing that those Blundstone boots ended up in Scottsdale, Arizona, when we don't have a reseller in the United States. So it starts to point out all the hanky-panky that goes on in the supply chain and some of the disruption associated with that. So it's a really good tool, I think, to see, do we have counterfeit problems, and do we have people that are selling in markets, authorized resellers selling in markets that they're not authorized to sell in. So that's a very quick look at what we're doing from a technology perspective. And again, I appreciate the invite and thank you for your time.
Dan, thank you so much for that really fascinating talk. Do you want to come and join me here? And we'll have got time for a few quick questions. So once again, if anyone would like to ask a question, I'm sure Dan would love to receive any questions from the floor. The lights are quite bright, so do put your hands up really clearly or stand up and one of the Tepramir team will come to you with a microphone. Dan, let me start quickly by asking you though, what's leading you to create fixes to problems with authenticity, and has BSI had any issues here?
Well, we've had issues with our certificates being counterfeited. So now we're blockchaining all of our certificates. It's a client requirement. And coming up with these ecosystems, we actually are starting to do the filing. So if you've got an N95 certification from BSI, you have to have that notarized and filed in every country around the world that you sell it in. So we're starting to do that as a service right now. And we had a number of certificates counterfeited. But what we're hearing from clients, and again, big N95 manufacturers, just think anybody that's got PPE, even food products that are in short supply, they're having real issues with it. And so while we certify it and a company can trust it, we're handing a problem over to them associated with that. So we're trying to work with them to identify, what we can do, because their core competency is probably not coming up with anti-counterfeit measures. So, we're working in those areas with them.
And you talked about immersive audits. Besides immersive, what does the future of audits look like, do you think? And are there any big changes on the horizon?
Yeah. I think Audit 4.0 is a concept that we'll all come to know. I don't know about love, but we're going to probably need to get very familiar with it. As factories get more and more automated, as well as distribution centers, the supply chain, we need to really be focusing on data interoperability. How can we get that information out of that distribution center, out of that LTL, FTL, whatever it is, whatever node in the supply chain it is, to where we can have more real time. I think we saw some good examples of that demonstrated here yesterday, but we need to connect those different ecosystems. There's obviously data interoperability issues to overcome, but I think more and more now, it'll be less people, it'll be more machine actually ensuring the certification, which has benefits because we can do it real time, we can spot anomalies a lot quicker, and that's really where I see the trend going. And
just to touch upon blockchain, which you talked about, is it a blockchain-based solution, is a blockchain-based solution hard and expensive to implement? Can you give us an idea of some of the costs that are involved with that?
Yeah.
And any other challenges?
My first few use cases of that were, we went after large Fortune 100 companies to partner with, which, we're a small 5,000 person company. And Gilead's workforce is 2.5 times what our company is, just in his security group, I learned yesterday. I'm amazed by that. But yeah, it depends on who you go with. I think the price of blockchain has come down tremendously. We're using something called a decentralized knowledge graph, and I know that's technical gobbledygook, but it's the same thing that Facebook, Google, and others use to build a story around you, the consumer, so they know if you go there, you're probably going to like these other sites, that if you bought this, you'll likely buy that. And so a decentralized knowledge graph allows you to make those relational connections, and the price of that's coming down quite a bit. I think it's who you go with. If you're going, sorry if IBM's here, if you go with IBM, you're looking at 7 figures, but you don't need to go with IBM to have something that's affordable under 6 figures.
And are there any other challenges associated with implementing it?
Data interoperability, it can be garbage in, garbage out. And you just got to sanitize your data. And you have to work with the system that recognizes anomalies in data. And so we've got a good partner that we've been working with and have had very good results. So yeah, we've been able to address that.
I wanted to talk about partnership, actually, because you touched on that in your presentation. How important is collaboration, do you find, in the innovation that you're doing?
It's a contact sport. Innovation's a contact sport. So, I'm over in the premier section looking around, looking very closely at a distance, and I'm sure we'll have some conversations today, but yeah, you get ideas. And collaboration is extremely important. You don't dream this stuff up in a lab. We've got several labs around the world, but you have to be out there talking to clients and understanding what their unsolved challenges are, but also seeing what's available in the marketplace, because it's not our core competency, and most companies' core competencies is to create blockchain technology, to create immersive software. It's complex stuff, so you have to partner. You just can't innovate without partnership. So venture funds are very important. So take an equity stake in a company, sit on a board of advisors for others. There's good tools, good avenues for that, and we're deploying all of those.
Dan, that brings us to the end of our time, but it's been a really fascinating talk, and thank you so much for answering some of our questions as well. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks, Sam.